Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Total Economic Impact Study of EXL's digital solutions that with EXL Digital and our partners over at Forrester that we've been able to put together to show some of the results that our clients are seeing engaging with EXL Digital. Today, you're joining myself, Matthew Paris. I'm the VP of Advanced Digital Solutions and Client Success here at EXL. I'll be moderating and one of the panelists. We also have Gaurav Iyer, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of Advanced Digital Solutions here at EXL, and our partner Casey Saronic, who is a Senior Consultant at Forrester, who helped shepherd us along this total economic study and kind of help work with our clients and kind of put together all of these results. First, for everybody who doesn't know who EXL is, we are a digital solutions consultancy. We focus on emerging businesses, healthcare, analytics, and digital solutions. We like to think that our primary goal is to help our clients really understand what digital is. We know that kind of when we speak to different clients across different industries, across different domains, that everybody has a little bit different definition of digital. And how they can use digital to impact their operations. So for us, we think about digital as operationalizing AI, analytics, and cloud as part of like a broader redesign of enterprise, right? Taking a real kind of broad enterprise view of these solutions to help organizations achieve results and get the promise of digital. I know we all kind of see these things pop up, especially around like generative AI, ChatGPT, RPA, all these digital solutions, right? And a lot of that has kind of fallen by the wayside or hasn't really kind of delivered the impact that maybe we were hoping by now. I think for us, part of doing this study was kind of understanding, where our digital solutions have that impact and how companies can realize that. Again, and that's really why we kind of commissioned this, right? We really wanted to take kind of a holistic view of our solutions, see where we could kind of look at organizations and where they've adopted digital, especially from that lens of AI analytics and cloud, and really kind of hone in on those results and see where value is being created. As part of this, we're hoping this to be kind of a collaborative discussion. We have some slides that we're going to go through to kind of talk about this study that we've worked on with Forrester, but also there's a Q&A section or a Q&A button down the bottom. If you have any questions that pop up during this, please feel free to enter in the question. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. Any questions that are submitted that we don't get to, myself or somebody will follow up with an answer to any of those questions. So thank you everybody for joining with us today. We're really excited about kind of the agenda and everything that we're going to talk about as part of the study in EXL's digital solutions. So I think with that being said, I'll kick it over to Casey and she can get us started.
Great. Thanks, Matt. It is a pleasure to be here and have an opportunity to walk everyone through the findings of this total economic impact study. As mentioned, my name is Casey Sarotnik and I'm in the consulting practice at Forrester. We have a bit of an agenda here that we will go through, starting with the process and the methodology behind TEI. We'll also discuss the high-level impacts of EXL through the executive summary before we hone in on the specific customer experiences of the interviewed customer set through the customer journeys, and then, of course, the associated study results, and that include the financial summary. I'll be speaking directly to these study results throughout the course of the presentation, and Matt and Gaurav from the EXL team will jump in and broaden a few topics as we go with their knowledge. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, what is TEI? TEI stands for Total Economic Impact. We at Forrester built the methodology about 20 years ago, and today a TEI case study looks at return on investment, or ROI, while also taking into account risk and any uncertainty around the technology investment. The objective of taking that approach is really to provide a realistic and conservative look at the technology assessment that you should feel confident applying your own business context to. Within the TEI framework, we look at standard ROI components that include benefits for things like technology cost savings and efficiencies, as well as costs. So those would be the costs for the various solutions and the projects associated with implementing them. And then we also consider something called flexibility, which to Forrester is the notion that now that you have this technology in place, what new long-term paths are open to you? This is especially relevant when we're talking about a set of solutions versus a single discrete product, because there's a lot of variations in terms of how folks approach an initial investment with the different digital solutions at EXL, and then how they grow and expand those along the way. As a final step, as mentioned, we look at risk to account for certain variations in benefits and costs, and all of those considerations come together for the total economic impact analysis. This is a high-level visualization of the process steps that we took to get here today. We start with due diligence, where we talk to subject matter experts internal to EXL before looking externally and speaking directly with EXL customers. Based on that customer data, we create a composite organization, which is a representative and hypothetical organization, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But that is what we apply our financial analysis to, that composite organization. All of this information gets rolled into a written case study, and it goes through a rigorous review cycle, both internal at Forrester and then also to collect EXL feedback. Assuming we completed the necessary due diligence, which of course we did, we arrive at step 2 of our TEI process, which is to collect data from EXL customers and ultimately use that data to feed our financial analysis. For this study, we interviewed 4 representatives at 4 different organizations that are current EXL customers, and these customers engaged with a variety of the digital solutions that are offered by EXL. We interview them in a 60-minute interview format. The individuals that you see on the screen obviously represent different levels inside organizations. They represent different functional areas, and also a lot of variation from the digital solutions that we're engaged with, and also where inside the business those solutions were applied. It's worth noting that EXL offers many digital solutions that can be tailored to fit organizations' particular needs. We did not cover all of the solution offerings in this TEI. In fact, some of the customers that we interviewed were using solutions such as PayMentor in areas of their business that were not necessarily in scope for purposes of this study. Another important aspect of our analysis is to deeply understand where customers were coming from, what was going on at their organizations before they decided to invest in EXL. We call that the before state, and that's what we apply our analysis against. The organizations that we spoke with engaged with EXL to fuel some existing internal digital transformation initiative. Before EXL came onto the scene with their digital solutions, these organizations lacked the technology, the resource expertise, and even the bandwidth in a lot of cases to effectively power these transformation opportunities on their own. Some of the specific challenges that we heard in customer interviews included siloed technology, and that could be siloed by business function or even by process. And because of the silos in the technology, a lot of organizations chose or had to bridge those technology gaps with manual intervention. If you're thinking about processes that include a lot of manual intervention, of course, what that does is it extends process timelines. And in a lot of cases, these processes had front-facing functions and were extending those front-facing functions for the business. Again, if we think about the technology, the silo technology and the technology gaps, and also manual intervention, which can lead to human error, all of this goes to say that you can't necessarily trust the underlying data that is supporting these business functions. And because a lot of them are forward facing, they were impacting the customer or external end customer experiences as well for these organizations. So while we are focused again on the challenges that were elevated during the customer conversations that we had for the TEI, there are obviously a lot of examples that are outside the purview of the TEI. And I know Matt and Gaurav are very familiar, so I will pass to them to provide a little bit more color and context in this area.
No, thank you, Casey. No, I think these are three. I think this is one of the things that the TEI study really helped us, right? Like, I think these were things that we believed were true, right? As we were kind of working with our clients, as we took kind of like a broad look across the portfolio of companies we worked with, and TI really helped us kind of like put this on a piece of paper and really kind of validated that. As we looked at technology silos, for instance, being plagued obviously by manual intervention, right? People swivel chairing, people having to switch between different systems. I know in one of our clients, an insurance company, there was a lot of swivel chairing back and forth between one system to another system directly as they were dealing with one of their customers, right? So that leads to like this kind of weird dynamic where the customer's like not really sure why you don't have the information, or like why it's taking so long to get kind of like an easy answer. So I know like that technology silo has been really kind of a challenge for us. And Gaurav, I know you have some areas too that this has kind of popped up as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. So I think Casey and you are spot on. One of the areas where we've seen a lot of challenges is around operational change management, right? So, while you can have the best software, you can have the best technology, the operations needs to get trained on it. They need to understand how it makes their life better, how it elevates their work. And I think a lot of that is what clients struggle with because they focus so much on the software, right? So I think that's one thing which we've seen as challenges, which people don't consider when they look at, technology investment. I think the second thing is, today it's about, every business trying to become data driven, right? So technology and software generates a lot of data. And the ROI from that technology investment driving efficiency and cost takeout is good, but the real multiplier is you can use that data to make better decisions, right? So I'll give you an example. In the insurance industry, right, there's a lot of manual data processing, a lot of unstructured data in underwriting. So while you can structure that data, you can use NLP, you can use AI, you can get that data in a very clear format. But what to do with the data, right? Can you really create a score? Can you really help the underwriter make a decision? That's the part which really drives value, right? And that's the to the Forrester thesis, that's where the economic impact comes, right? So I think it's stepping above. So I think it's tech plus data, it's change management. These are two additional challenges which are really key to actually drive value.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Garvin. I think as we build on that too, right, as we kind of move into, as we think about these extended business process timelines, right? Those challenges, I think, led to a lot of like low adoption of these new kind of tech, these new solutions that companies were putting out there, right? As they spent all this money, right? They've put out this new kind of, shiny new toy for everybody to kind of take. And this is really, they come in thinking like, this is really going to make an impact for us. And then, 6 months, a year later, we come back, or, they come, that's usually when they start reaching out to us saying, hey, we did this big transformation, but then, there's a low adoption of it, right? What do we do to kind of, and as you mentioned, right, the change management, such an important piece of that,
Yeah.
right? As we kind of think about that, driving that change is really where you're going to see the value, right? And I think also from that perspective, right, when we think about extended timelines, when we kind of reach out to these clients, some of these transformations have been going on for years, right? A year, 2 years, 3 years, right? And that's like a really long time, right? And you lose momentum, you kind of lose that buy-in. I think for us, we come in and try to get in there, even though we're taking kind of a holistic approach, we want to come in there and make quick impacts, right? Show value immediately, right? And I know that's an area for our clients that's really important to them. And I think a lot of times why they choose us, right, is that kind of being able to kind of reduce some of that timeline, Gaurav. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Matt. So I think speed is of the essence, right? And there is a lot of technology transformation fatigue in the industry, to your point. I think if you ask anybody, there's between a 60 to 70% failure rate, quote unquote, with technology transformation that are getting done in the enterprise, right? And, so there is a lot of, fatigue with technology. But I think the key to solving for that is to get a version out quickly, right? So when I say a version out, it's a combination of man plus machine, right? So you can have software, but you also have the human in the loop, and you also have exception handling built in, so that what you go live with is not the end state, but it does drive value, right? To again the point that Forrest is making, it delivers immediate benefits, it rallies the organization, it starts getting your customer experience getting better. But I think the key thing is for organizations to figure out what is their first MVP that they go live with, a combination of tech, human in the loop, and obviously customization for the industry. So I think that's the way we've seen clients trying to think about this problem, because clearly no one has appetite for a 2-3 year roadmap of tech transformation. So that's completely something which we are seeing people moving away from.
No, absolutely right. And yeah, and as we kind of like transition, right, to we think about these inconsistent consumer experiences, right? With that kind of the challenge, right, that's created there is that it's really impacting the end customer, right? Like those kind of poor low adoptions, high turnaround times, right? That leads to low customer NPS scores. It leads to, I know we spend a lot of time from the customer experience side, just thinking about abandoning journeys, repeated contacts, right? There's both kind of like a top line revenue implication to these things and like both a bottom line operations like inefficiency that really drives that kind of these extended timelines, this low adoption, and it directly impacts your customer, right? And that's like an area, and we want that, like, again, and a lot of times clients come to us already when that's kind of happened, but that's really what you want to get ahead of, right? Like you don't want these kind of challenges around operations or customer experience to kind of bleed into that experience they're having, because in this the world we live in now, information flows so fast via social media or kind of just how things get out there now. It's you don't have 6 months, a year to kind of like change what you're doing. Those impacts are immediate. Those are quarter to quarter. So that's these three big challenges, right, that the TI study really helped us kind of, again, I think something we believed, and it really helped us cement that these are like things that we are seeing that our clients are telling both us and Forrester. I think this is like really helped. This study is really kind of helped put a lot of that to light for us. So yeah, I think great. Casey, I don't know if there's anything you can add here, if you maybe just want to move on to the next area.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you and Gaurav added that additional context, because I think everybody is going to hear a lot of the same patterns come through in the results and how we quantified the benefits for this study in particular. So thinking about the study or focusing back in on the study results, again, the digital solutions are highly customizable. It really depends on the business needs, like we've been talking about. However, at the highest level, we found that when customers were able to leverage their partnership with EXL, they were able to better navigate their own digital transformations to meet whatever their specific business needs might have been at the time, and recognize, Matt, to your point, not only the bottom line improvements for efficiencies and cost savings, but also a lot of these organizations were at a place where those inefficiencies and that those technology silos were impacting their end customers, their external customers as well. So being able to mitigate those challenges internally had good improvements and benefits to their external customers as well, that drove revenue and other top line improvements. So thinking about those benefit categories, the results come together. Sorry about that. Those results come together in a financial analysis that covers a 3-year period. And we do the math there, even though it's over 3 years, to represent benefits and costs in present value, so represented in today's dollars. The big takeaway, of course, is that our composite organization receives a return on investment of 338%. Benefits of over $6.45 million. And then if you factor costs back into the equation, you're just under $5 million for net present value of those benefits. So that's what we're striving towards. We'll talk about how we get there.
And Casey, can I talk about, before you maybe jump to the next slide? I think there's just two things that I think it's that would like to highlight as part of this slide, right? I think that one, the ROI, right? Like 3-4x on kind of your investment in this space is usually, I think, what we're usually talking about when we talk to clients about their challenges, right? And I think that payback period is also super important, right? Less than 6 months. I think a lot of times when clients are starting to reach out to us when they've tried to kind of take digital on their own, is they're usually like a year, 2, sometimes 3 to 5 years into some of these journeys, and they've seen no kind of payback or no ROI, right? And for us, I think, like Gaurav mentioned, it's super important to get those key wins and to show value early, get that payback, get some of that return on investment as soon as possible, because like that's where you get the buy-in for kind of the broader, when we come in, we're usually saying like, hey, you don't want to death by 1,000 cuts, right? You want to maybe start small and kind of get bigger and bite off bigger pieces as you go. But you want to have that vision in mind of kind of the holistic organization as you go through that. And I think that quick payback period is super important. It's something we really focus on as part of our solutioning, because we want to make sure that that RI and that buy-in happens right away, and we're not 2 years into working with a client and they're like, I'm not sure what we got from this.
Right. Exactly. It's a nice driver for that expanded investment in EXL and expanded investment, of course, in their own internal digital transformations. So that makes sense. So speaking of the variables, before we talk about benefits specifically, I wanted to highlight where customers that we interviewed, the 4 customers that we interviewed, were using the various EXL digital solutions, so that everybody had the context for the context we had as we went through this TEI journey. The first organization that we talked to was a financial services organization. They were leveraging Extracto, which is EXL's solution that layers intelligent document and image processing into various workflows, plus workflow orchestration to streamline specifically their insurance certificate production process, as well as their invoicing process. So those were the 2 business use cases there. We also spoke with a banking organization that implemented PayMentor, which I briefly mentioned earlier, which is EXL's collections and receivables communication platform. And the goal there was to enable omni-channel communication and orchestration, again, to improve those experiences as well. We spoke with a manufacturing organization that used EXL project resources to build and deploy analytics dashboard to elevate insights and make better business decisions. I think that's a point that Gaurav made earlier. And then what those decisions enabled them to do is to identify opportunities for revenue recovery in their organization. They specifically applied these dashboards to their unearned cash discount process, as well as their shipping deduction data as well inside their accounting organization. The final financial services organization was using Excelia, which is EXL's conversational AI and automation solution, inside their contact center operations. And therefore, they were able to improve agent efficiencies through their claims intake process as well. So just giving everybody a sense of the wide breadth of both the solutions that we covered in this study, as well as the different business use cases that they were applied to as well. Oops. Sorry about that. There we go. Finally, before the last thing to cover before we talk through the benefits specifically, is the idea around this composite organization, which we've talked about. The idea here is that we need to, as Forrester, we need to make a set of assumptions. So we had a wide range of organizations that we talked to, a lot of different solutions, a lot of different business objectives. We have to put a stake in the ground in order to quantify some of the benefits for the purposes of this TEI. Before we get into, we have some of the details here on the slide for you to take in and digest. However, I think that the most important thing to note here is that the composite is meant to be representative. Its job is to be broad and slightly more generalized in its approach to benefits, so that you can see yourself in some of these characteristics. What's important to keep in mind as we walk through the benefits is that all of these characteristics, even though they might be broad and feel a little bit more general, is that they're rooted in customer data. This is a representation of the customers that we spoke with. And then also to note where the variabilities are. So we applied these benefit categories to specific business application processes or use cases. It might look a little different inside your organization, but the principles behind the benefits themselves are still the same. The final thing to keep in mind is, of course, again, where Forrester process and methodology comes into play, which is to make these set of assumptions in order to quantify the data. We will highlight where we've made some assumptions along the way, and then we can talk about each of those in turn. This is a high-level view of the benefits that we'll dig into. So these are the benefits as applied to the composite organization. They fall nicely into three buckets of value that we've talked about, from the bottom line efficiencies and bottom line cost savings, as well as the revenue representation. So inside each of these three buckets are 5 different specific benefit categories, and we'll start with the first one. So the interviewees that we talked to, as I said, a few of them leveraged Extracto for data extraction capabilities and workflow orchestration. The goal there was to streamline certain business processes. So through streamlining these business processes, they were actually able to uncover where some redundant legacy solutions might have been in place, and they were able to eliminate those and save on the associated maintenance contracts. Additionally, if you're streamlining the technology that underpins these solutions, you're also stopping employees from having to engage with a wide set of backend systems as well as business applications. Therefore, you're also able to mitigate the associated production support costs with them. To calculate the total technology cost savings, we make a few assumptions. The first is that the organization, the composite, engages with Extracto in the first year of the investment as part of a phase 1 partnership with EXL. They decide to apply their Extracto project to a front office business process, which will be important later. The cost savings are lowest in the first year because if you're thinking about retiring backend systems, there's, the maintenance contracts associated with them are often annual, and therefore it's difficult to eliminate them mid-year. However, those cost savings grow over time. Of course, we also apply risk percentage to this benefit, which takes into account that, of course, this will vary depending on which business process internal to your organization that you apply it to, and what back-end technology is supporting that process currently today. First one.
So, Casey?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Sorry. So, Casey, I think this is an excellent point. And while, the DEI study by, Forrester has looked at technology costs. So that's obviously one component. And to your point, it's quick savings and it's, significant savings. I think there are 2 other savings that Extracto, for example, delivers to a client in this scenario, right? One is it looks at operational efficiency, which I think you did talk about on the previous slide. The fact that we've consolidated screens, the data is now available on those screens, actually reduces processing time by 50-60% for the operations team, right? Which doesn't mean that they actually go out of work. It actually means that they're able to focus on validation, objection handling by the customers, which gets me to the third benefit, right? Which is better customer experience leading to revenue and better brand in the market, right? So for example, in this case, because we're able to deliver better experiences, customers are likely to come back to our client more for additional products and additional services, right? So I think there are 3 broad, kinds of benefits that Extracto, for example, delivers to clients in such a scenario.
Yeah, and to build on what Gaurav's saying too, I think those are key components, right? Because a lot of organizations have kind of dipped their toe, if they haven't already kind of adopted a data extraction tool, right? There's a lot of data extraction tools in the market. And I think that's one of those areas when we talk to clients, it's ones that they probably see the least amount of value in if they just look at it from like a data extraction tool or like just from like that technology perspective. When you bring in kind of the workflow orchestration and when you take that kind of more holistic approach, and then when you bring that customer experience piece kind of as part of that, right, kind of bringing all of that together, that's where you really start to see the value. And again, I think a lot of customers, when they engage with us, they're like, oh, we have a tool already, it does an okay job, or, hey, we tried that, it didn't work. Those are things that we hear a lot. And I think it's things that, as part of Extracto, it's something that we focus on when we talk to clients. It's about kind of that more holistic and that kind of like broader view of the value that bringing in a data extraction tool and tying it together with those other aspects, that's where you're going to start seeing kind of that return on value. And that's how you get that faster return on value, when instead of just kind of throwing it out there in a vacuum and letting it extract data and then seeing what happens.
Absolutely. And that sets us up nicely for the next benefit, which is looking at the impact to those operational resources, the employees that are impacted by streamlining the larger business process here. So, of course, Gaurav mentioned some of the contributing factors to this benefit, which is that if you reduce and streamline the back-end technology that's supporting a business process and add and layer in workflow orchestration, employees are going to spend less time toggling screens. A lot of the manual workarounds that previously existed are no longer going to be necessary. And all of that contributes to a better quality of work that also reduces a lot of the rework, the time spent on rework opportunities as well. So to calculate the business or the value of this business process efficiencies for the composite, we applied this to a business application that we heard, or a use case application that we heard in the customer interviews, which is to that front office insurance certificate production process. So specifically what that operation looked like is that the organization was responsible for producing 2,500 insurance certificates a day. Before EXL, each of those certificates end to end would take about 40 minutes to complete. Streamlining the back-end tech, supporting the process, and also improving the experiences for the employees that strung it together reduces the time spent and increases the efficiencies by 25% in the first year, and that grows to 35% in subsequent years of the investment here.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing that often gets overlooked when customers talk about kind of these transformation efforts, especially as they adopt tools, right? And it's really highlighted here, right, as part of the study, is that the employees really benefit from this a lot, right? Like they're happier, they're doing the work they want to be focusing on, they're using their brains, they're being more analytical, and the work that's sort of redundant or kind of like drains them is removed by the solution, right? And I think, again, that's where I think your customers also benefit a lot from, right? If you think about your, if you have an employee who's kind of like the face of your brand and the face of your company, you don't want that person being kind of worn down or kind of like not excited to talk to a customer. You want that customer to have a great experience as they're speaking to somebody. A lot of times that's like one of the most lasting experiences with them is when they've, I spoke to somebody at XYZ company and I had a great experience, right? And that kind of like translates into the market. It translates into the brand, the Yelp reviews, kind of all that stuff. And I think this is something that we see a lot of, right? Where like employees are now doing a better job. They're more efficient, they're happier, and they're interacting with their customers better, right? And then we're seeing those NPS scores go up. We're seeing less abandoned journeys. We see that impact on the customer side as well. And I don't know if anything you want to add to that, Gaurav.
I think, Matt, you are spot on. I just add one other point that, if you look at Excelia and if you look at, our CX solutions, right? I think driving efficiencies in the way the agents and the operations teams work is, I think, a big goal, right? So, for example, as you said, Matt, right, avoiding toggling between screens, avoiding having to go into, 10 databases looking for data, having auto population of customer information. All of that enables them to focus on the customer problem versus spending 50% of the call or interaction actually taking down data and validating data, right? And that's huge from a customer standpoint. The customer gets it. The customer, has a true omni-channel experience. He knows his data is secure. He knows the agent has his entire case on file. It's just a much better, brand or perception of your own product that is created in the customer's mind if you use the right CX tools.
Absolutely.
Great. So Gaurav mentions Excelia, which is another one of the digital solutions that we covered for the purposes of this TEI. However, just to level set, the first two benefits that we talked about are specific to Extracto and the way that the composite applied that to their organization. The next two benefits that we're going to talk to before we talk about Excelia is a decision support tool project that our composite organization engages with EXL to build. They kick this off also in the first year of the investment as sort of a phase 2 of expanding their engagement with EXL, given the success that they saw from applying Extracto. So for the decision support tools, the first benefit is from the dashboards created by EXL for the organization. These dashboards eliminate a lot of the manual reporting effort for the group of employees that were responsible for it before, which oftentimes included a lot of high-level business leaders and executives. The reporting process that we're talking about eliminating is everything from data collection efforts through normalizing that data and also generating the physical reports. To calculate the time savings associated with this project, we have to make a set of assumptions around who was involved in reporting before. We assume 9 FTEs spend 20% of their time on business insight reporting on an annual basis before EXL. And then we also assume that that time spent is completely eliminated because these analytics dashboards continue to update live throughout the course of the investment. So this one is specific to reporting efficiencies. And then, of course, on the flip side, we'll talk about what that does for the organization now that they have these dashboards in place.
And I think this is one of those where we do work with a lot of very large legacy companies that maybe, that aren't digitally native, right? They've been around for 100 years. And I think this is one of the things they ask us about the most, right? We have a lot of people spending a lot of time creating a lot of reports, studies, dashboards, putting data together, and it wastes a lot of time, right? We hired these folks to come in and be analytical, to use the data to make decisions, and that's not what they end up doing. They spend the majority of their time trying to get a dashboard to fit into a PowerPoint to send in an email that no one ever looks at, right? And then the data is, by the time they look at it, the data's stale and it's not even relevant anymore. I think where we've seen a lot of success in this dashboard decision support tool area and building that stuff out is moving from kind of a reactive to a proactive approach. All the data is now live. It's all accessible. It can be shared and it can be used to make decisions. And that's where our customers want to get to. They want to use their data. They want to be data led. They want to use data to make decisions. And they're just not there yet. And they don't really know how to get there. And that's usually our goal when they're engaging with us, is getting them to be more proactive in their decision making and using the data to drive decisions, to drive policy, to drive strategy. And that's where they start seeing the value. And again, it's really hard to quantify that. You can always look at operational efficiency, but when you look at a customer who can now make a real-time data decision, it's hard to put a dollar value on that sometimes, but it's, it changes the way you operate and it changes the way you do business.
Great. It is hard to put a dollar amount to what that does for the business from a top line perspective. However, we were lucky enough to talk to a customer that had been using the decision support tools to support their unearned cash discount workflow. They provided us with the example where more transparency into this process allowed them to identify and eliminate 17% of the unearned cash discounts that they were previously carrying in their books in the first year of the investment. On top of that, I know one of the things that we consistently have been talking about is that the time to value of it all. So what does EXL bring to the table? Theoretically, these organizations could have, thrown a bunch of resources at creating these kinds of decision support tools internally, but what's the special sauce that EXL brought to the table? That was being able to deliver on these decision support tools 9 months faster than if they had to build them internally or go some other route in order to create and leverage these insights. So that was a direct example from one of the customers. The revenue associated with those 9 months that they have been able to leverage these insights sooner than they would have if they built these dashboards themselves, it is worth quite a bit to the organization in terms of customer or internal experiences for employees, but also for the revenue that is recovered in those additional months of the investment.
Yeah, and I think Casey, you are spot on. I think the other thing that allows someone like EXL to actually generate this kind of value is our domain expertise, right? So when it comes to finance and accounting, when it comes to invoice to cash, invoice to pay, we've had a lot of experience, running those operations, right? So I think as we build our solutions and as we build our dashboards, we've been able to bring all of that domain expertise into actually crafting out what's the right data element, whether it's reductions, what's the right element that goes into an enhanced pricing tool. So I think that's the other element, that if you just think about this as software and a tool to be built, then I think you will probably not get the value. Versus if you really think about the business, what's the real drivers of value, and you craft out something, there's going to be greater amount of success you will have. That's the only thing I'd say.
Fantastic. So the final benefit that we'll talk about in some detail is a benefit that we have associated with Excelia, which we've started to talk about before. So again, the composite organization descriptions not only take into consideration some assumptions around how these benefits are applied, but also when the benefits are applied. So for purposes of our composite, we assume that Extracto and the decision support tools are implemented in the first year of the investment. The success seen in those two ventures leads the organization to implement Excelia in their contact center in the third year. The full breadth of our financial analysis only covers 3 years of the investment. So the real benefits of the agent efficiencies and the improved customer experiences that come along with having Excelia in place are future flexibility for our composite. However, they do recognize some real value inside the 3-year investment in just the few short months that are that we're covering in that year 3, from being able to leverage EXL, their best practice, their expertise, their hands-on resources for that additional bandwidth in order to implement Excelia without having to dedicate internal resources to that effort. So those internal resources that now can feel free to focus on their core competencies or other digital transformation initiatives while Excelia handles the implementation. So the organizations that we talked to estimated that they would have had to dedicate 5 FTE for a period of 4 months to this implementation effort had it not been for EXL.
Yeah. No, again, I think this is, I know Excelia is, it's another one of those tools that I think when people hear about it, it's like, oh, we've tried chat, we've tried different kind of channels. We've did that before for varying success. And I think, I think we're bringing more than just the tool to the table, right? We bring that domain expertise that I think like Gaurav was mentioning last time, right? We bring in this kind of this client and domain expertise that I think a lot of other organizations don't necessarily have as they're kind of building out these solutions that really kind of help separate us, I think, from other players in the space or players in the space that maybe just focus on the tool piece. The AWSs of the world who aren't necessarily like, they're agnostic to a particular domain area. We bring domain expertise that I think really leverage or enhances the way those tools operate, that if you just tried to go alone at it with maybe one of those tool providers, you're not going to see the same results as the companies that we looked at here have seen.
Yeah. And I'll just end by just saying one thing is that, if you think about all the solutions that Casey spoke about, right, there is a stitching together and an entire roadmap to them, right? So for example, in collections, and we work with multiple banks, we start off with, the decision science to look at their collection strategies and to make them more data driven. Second, we actually link it to their communication with their customers. This is where we use, Excelia, so that, the strategies that get developed, that's the strategy that gets communicated to your customers, right? And the last thing we do is we stitch it all together, right? So does the customer feedback about how they deal with you and how they react, does it come back to your strategy? And does it, again, close the loop, right? So I think closing the loop on our solutions between communicating with customers and the data that resides in your enterprise, that's a key element which we think in the end drives value. So Matt, over to you.
I think Casey, Casey, I think you have one more slide, and then I'll.
I do.
Yep,
I do. We spent a lot of time talking about benefits for the purposes of this ROI, but there's obviously a flip side of the equation, which is relative to cost of the equation. Again, this is going to vary greatly in terms of which solutions you have in place and what business lines you roll EXL solutions out to. However, it's worth noting that the two categories are the cost to EXL for the different solutions, as well as internal resource time spent on investment related activities, whether they're helping with implementation or ongoing maintenance and admin of whatever is in place. So that's what's included to get to our financial results again, which, just a reminder, it's the 338% on ROI and benefits of $6.45 million for the composite. And that's all.
Yes. Thank you, Casey, and thank you for helping put all this together and bringing kind of Forrester's expertise into this space. Again, I think it really was helpful for us to kind of see all of this. I know it's areas that I think we thought we knew, we were pretty sure we were right about, and then to have Forrester kind of come in and validate it for us as kind of a third party, I think it's been really helpful to see this. We're about a minute over. There's a couple questions. We'll make sure we get responses out to the questions that have come in. I think we want to maybe just close this out with just, again, thanking Forrester for helping us put this together, Gaurav for joining and helping elaborate on kind of our solutions. I think for us, as we're striving to help companies be more data-led and kind of move towards more of a personalization and kind of redesigning how they're using digital solutions, I think we really kind of try to drive some of that from more of a holistic approach to how to use digital, how to embed digital into your operations, how to kind of look at analytics, the cloud, and digital solutions to really create value, to differentiate yourself from your competitors, to create unique customer experience and personalized customer experiences. I think that's kind of how clients have engaged us. I think it makes us a bit unique kind of in this space as well, as we kind of bring all these things together. So thank you everybody for spending the time with us today. Any questions, feel free to reach out, but everybody have a great Monday, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Casey. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.